Episode 57 AM, November 21st, 2024. Written doubles funds available for individuals heat pump switch. In episode 57 AM, 1 World 2, United States, 3 Montana, 4 heat pumps, 5 Britain doubles funds available for individuals heat pump switch. Main content, 1A World. Climate talks teeter, with rich and poor countries in a tug of war. Western countries are confronting demands for trillions of dollars to fight climate change and to cope with its worsening effects. Listen to this article. 6:42 minutes. Reporting from the COP29 Climate Summit in Baku, Azerbaijan. RAWSEP View Key Excerpt. Further complicating the talks, under UN rules set down decades ago, China is considered a developing country. Western nations have pushed for the list of developed countries to be expanded to include China and others, like Saudi Arabia, essentially drafting them into a list of donor countries that would be held accountable for financial contributions. China has recently overtaken Europe as the second largest emitter of greenhouse gases in history. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. November 21st, 2024. A 2-week marathon of climate talks has entered its grueling final dash, with developed and developing nations still deadlocked over how many hundreds of billions of dollars wealthy countries should invest to help speed the global transition to cleaner energy and protect the most vulnerable countries against catastrophes of global warming. The world's poorest and most vulnerable countries have banded together with newly industrialized economic giants like China and India to demand that history's biggest greenhouse gas polluters, including the United States and Europe, come up with a plan to provide $1.3 trillion in climate financing per year. Western countries have struggled to cobble together the $100 billion per year they promised at a climate summit 15 years ago. The financing question has become even trickier with a recent rightward political shift in some of those countries, notably the election of Donald J. Trump as U.S. president just a week before the start of this year's climate summit, known as COP29. Money is such a contentious issue that the possibility of failure loomed over the negotiations on Thursday. The overarching objective of the talks, being held in Baku, Azerbaijan, is to set a new goal for annual financial flows. The $1.3 trillion number is based on cost estimates that would hold the global temperature increase below 2 degrees Celsius, or 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit, compared with the pre-industrial average. The United States, the world's biggest economy and history's biggest emitter, is expected to withdraw from the Paris Agreement when Mr. Trump takes office, which means the country would very likely renege on whatever financial commitments the final agreement sets out. Not only is there not enough money for clean energy investments, but also developing countries are locked out of many clean energy investments by high interest rates, which make renewable sources more expensive than fossil fuels like coal and oil. Decisions at COP summits must be reached by unanimous consent. Several Western officials pointed to a relatively modest increase in upfront finance pledges to $200 billion or $300 billion a year from $100 billion a year, with heavy emphasis on efforts to reach into the trillions by leveraging private capital. As with all COP resolutions, that will require deftly crafted language. Developing countries will need to feel assured that, while the resolution is non-binding, its terms aren't riddled with loopholes that water down the financial obligation of wealthy countries. The talks coincide with another year of record-breaking heat. Global greenhouse gas emissions soared to a record 57 gigatons last year. Collectively, nations have been so slow to curtail their use of oil, gas, and coal that it now looks hard to limit the global temperature to the strictest targets set in the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. Scientists say every fraction of a degree of warming brings greater risks from deadly heat waves, wildfires, drought, storms, and species extinction. 2A United States. Substack. Letters from an American, Heather Cox Richarson. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. November 21st, 2024. Remember how American voters so hated Project 2025, the playbook for a second Trump term written by the Heritage Foundation and other right-wing institutions, that Trump said he had nothing to do with it, and then one of its key architects, Russell Vought, told undercover filmmakers that Trump was only running away from the project as political cover? It appears Vought was right, and the story that Trump had nothing to do with Project 2025 was, indeed, just political cover. Vought wrote the section of Project 2025 that covers the presidency, calling for aggressive use of the vast powers of the executive branch to bend or break the bureaucracy to the presidential will and identifying the OMB as the means of enforcing the president's agenda. Vought was Trump's OMB director during the end of his first term and tried to remove the civil service protections that have been in place since 1883 to protect federal workers from being fired for political reasons. That plan, known as Schedule F, would have affected about 88% of the federal workforce. One of the first things Biden did when he took office was to rescind Trump's executive order making that shift. Like that earlier attempt, Project 2025 leans heavily on the idea that personnel is policy, and that idea illuminates the choices the Trump team is making. Trump has refused to sign the official documents required by the 2022 Presidential Transition Act. Those documents mandate ethics commitments and require the incoming president to disclose private donations. They also limit those donations. Without the paperwork, Trump appointees cannot start the process of getting security clearances through the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The team says it is planning to do its own vetting of its candidates instead. Claiming they have a mandate, Trump's people have said they are launching a hostile takeover of the American government on behalf of the American people. But as voting numbers continue to come in, Trump's majority has fallen below 50% of voters, meaning that more voters chose someone else than chose Trump on November 5th. These results are far from being in mandate territory. In the vein of getting rid of regulations, today the chief executive of Delta Airlines said he expected the Trump administration would be a breath of fresh air after the Biden administration's consumer protection laws that he called government overreach. Meanwhile, in Washington, the Senate has been confirming President Joe Biden's judicial nominees, with the absence of Republican senators making the confirmations easier. 2B United States. We tire very quickly of being told that everything is on fire. The New York Times. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. November 21st, 2024. Crisis can be a powerful catalyst for shaping policy and improving society. Emergencies and epidemics are governed by formal declarations and precise definitions. It's up to us, officials, journalists, individuals, to decide when or whether that threshold has been crossed and, if so, what to do about it. It was in moments of crisis that Americans passed laws to protect our air and water, enacted policies that repaired the ozone layer, and established programs to monitor infectious disease threats around the world. Crisis gave us the FDA, the CDC, and the Environmental Protection Agency. Mass shootings make the list of crises, but everyday gun violence seldom does. Framing an issue as social progress and future prosperity increases support for an intervention. We tire very quickly of being told that everything is on fire. A better strategy for instilling urgency or inspiring action is to show people the real solution, and that change is possible. Do you have a story to tell that will inspire urgency? A workable solution? The data to make your case? In the 1990s, when tobacco companies were still considered untouchable in Washington and tobacco products were still regularly sold to children, the FDA commissioner embarked on an epic quest to classify nicotine as a drug. Neither smoking nor any of its related health problems were new. But by building a painstaking and highly public case against cigarette makers, the FDA had managed to enact stronger tobacco regulations. The messaging was clear, the solutions were obvious, and the public urgency, once awakened, was not wasted. How public alarms went wrong. For example, when suicide rates abruptly rose in the Weimar Republic in Germany, Nazis made their own case about what was wrong with society and how best to fix it. For the Nazis, suicides highlighted how ordinary Germans suffered from the nation's humiliation under the punitive Treaty of Versailles. And traditional conservatives appealed to suicides as a sign of the breakdown of religion and family life. Historians would later note that the increase in Weimar suicides was actually pretty small. What killed the Weimar Republic, Germany's first liberal democracy, was fear. Instead, identify the nation's top public health priorities and then provide steady, consistent funding to address them. One idea with bipartisan support is to create a separate health defense operation budget for a core set of infectious disease priorities, so that state and federal agencies don't have to wait for a crisis to take action. Instead of providing $100 billion every 5 to 10 years, why not provide $2 billion every year for a set of well-defined priorities that Congress can decide on? Want to conquer lung cancer? Focus on curbing cigarette consumption. Alcohol abuse? Look at the policies that govern alcohol sales. Chronic health conditions? Find a way to make healthcare universal. Reforms that incentivize prevention, and ones that curb the influence of special interests, would help. The problem is that hospitals still make a lot more money treating the worst outcomes of heart disease, strokes, and heart attacks than primary care doctors do to preventing heart disease. Panic is understandable, but there are many dark angels at our door now. Resisting them will require a better strategy than panic. 3 Montana Helena, Rural Health News. Wisconsin Office of Public Health Rural Health Reporter. Article written by Montana Public Radio, National Public Radio, and KFF Health News. MTPR, NPR, and KFF Health News. Storing guns away from a gun owner's home could reduce suicides, but legal hurdles loom. RAWSEP View. Stopping indoor residential wood burning has some parallels to storing guns away from the gun owner's home or locking guns away within the home. Both actions could save lives, especially lives of the residents of the home who are not gun owners or who are not the owner of the indoor residential wood stove, but who are only bystanders or minors, for instance, who could happen upon the firearm or wood burning stove and be collaterally injured by use of the firearm or the wood stove. However, the parallels seem to stop there because informal turning in of firearms, although it may prevent some shootings of others, is done in this case to prevent self-harm or suicide by the gun owners. Locking a gun away from a person experiencing a mental health crisis seems to be an effective way of preventing suicide if a gun owner recognizes signs of their own mental illness, and if the gun owner has a friend who takes away the gun away temporarily. RAWSEP's editor has talked to wood stove owners who assert their love or liking for their own wood stove as their reason for continuing wood burning, even after learning that it harms their health and their family's health. RAWSEP's editor has almost always viewed this as mere assertion of ownership and whistling in the dark about health hazards to the wood stove owner and his or her family. Ownership above family. Perhaps it would take a trusted friend to lock the indoor residential wood stove away from the wood stove owner for any period where the wood stove owner feels irrationally compelled to burn wood, endangering the health of himself and his family, before in a clear-headed moment the wood stove owner decides that rationally he or she must stop burning wood for home heating. There are more economical and truly clean alternatives to wood burning for home heating in 2024, which are heat pumps which work down to 40 degrees below zero, also act as air conditioners and lower monthly electrical bills immediately, if heat pump rebates, also available in 2024, are used at point of purchase. This article cites an example of a friend to many who locks away guns from people who recognize they are having mental health crises, and so that friend saves lives from suicide. This article goes into depth on the legal obstacles to helping friends in this way. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. October 26, 2023. Helena, Montana. A man unlocked a heavy black steel door to his home's gun safe. Most of this is mine. There are a few weapons in here that belong to other folks, he said. The man regularly stores firearms for others who are going through a mental health crisis. That puts time and space between them and their guns, which can significantly reduce suicide risk. The man first stored a firearm in the 1980s after the gun owner talked about suicide. I just walked over and took the strap off and said I was going to store his weapon for him in my toolbox. That's the whole premise of a Montana law passed earlier this year, to make it easier to help a friend get through a mental health crisis and alleviate the immediate risk of suicide until they get better. The law protects people who store firearms for others from legal liability if someone self-harms after picking up their gun. Public health officials hope that will encourage more people like the Montana man to store firearms for family and friends. They also want to encourage gun shops and shooting ranges to offer storage for the public. Montana public health officials are creating a map of locations that store firearms, similar to other states' so-called safe storage maps. Montana has the second highest suicide rate across the country, after Wyoming, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. About 85% of Montana's gun deaths are suicides, according to state data. That's much higher than the national average of 60%. Tough conversations. At a local gun show this spring, the Lewis and Clark County Suicide Prevention Coordinator set up a booth. She talks to people about how to bring up a tough topic like suicide and safe storage of firearms for anyone at risk, with friends and family. Sometimes her message is well received, but in other cases people shy away, which she said is a sign there's still a lot of work to do to normalize conversations about firearms and suicide. She is working on a local safe storage map identifying gun shops and other locations willing to store guns for the public. She hopes it will become a statewide resource and a tool for suicide hotline operators. Colorado, Washington, Louisiana, and other states have implemented some version of a safe firearm storage map or public messaging campaign encouraging people to store firearms outside the home while at increased risk for suicide. Legal barriers. I'm not really sure that firearms dealers doing hold agreements is really the best idea, said the owner of Capital Sports in Helena. Some gun shop owners participating in safe storage programs in other states say federal background check laws can also deter people from using the storage program in the first place. Hammer Down Firearms, a gun shop outside Denver, is on the safe storage map for Colorado. The idea of storing guns for the public is fine in theory, said a man who is co-owner. Many customers back out once they hear that they'll need to pass a background check when they come back to get their gun, he said. That background check includes questions about mental health treatment. Having gotten treatment doesn't necessarily disqualify someone from getting a gun back, but the questions can be confusing, especially for someone in crisis. Federal law doesn't prohibit a person from storing guns for another person, but in some places, like New York and Massachusetts, state laws can make doing so legally almost impossible. In New York State, you might be a licensed gun owner, but you're still not supposed to hold on to somebody's guns, because you're supposed to register each individual gun. The only workaround is to formally transfer ownership of a weapon at a gun shop. Ownership would have to be transferred again before the gun could be returned. In New York, that includes filing paperwork with the state for each gun. Other states allow immediate family members to hold on to a relative's guns without transfer paperwork, but they prohibit extended family members or friends from doing so. These legal hurdles just take too long to navigate during a crisis, said an emergency room physician and University of Colorado professor. The professor suggested that gun transfer and background check laws include exceptions for suicide prevention. In Washington state, a law change allows friends and extended family members, rather than just immediate family, to store a gun if suicide is a risk. The number of suicides involving firearms pushed the national suicide rate to an all-time high in 2022. According to a KFF analysis of preliminary mortality data, there is still a place for red flag or extreme risk laws that allow courts to legally seize firearms from someone who poses a risk to themselves or others. A North Carolina-based custom gun case designer said he has periodically gone into crisis over the years. When that happens, his friends take his firearms and change the code for the safe at his shop. He started talking about his experiences on various gun-oriented podcasts to promote the idea of safe storage. He has a list of people to call when things start going dark. He also keeps a note to himself in his gun safe in case he needs to be pulled back from the brink. Time to reach out. Things will get better. You're not weak. You're doing the right thing. Make the phone call. Signed, Future Pete. The note reads, "The best and worst developments in public health have always come from moments of crisis. For heat pumps, United States Heat Pumps. Electrify your community. RMI. Rebate program to streamline incentives and leverage their list of qualified heat pump contractors. Consider also coordinating with other heat pump leadership goes local. RMI. Fortunately, many state and utility rebate programs may already have qualified contractor lists to leverage. For example, in Arbor, Michigan, heat pumps have been having a moment. To help local governments develop these programs, RMI developed, for example, housing or construction-focused. United States. 4 ways a heat pump will reduce your utility bills. MSN Heat Pump System. 1. They're simply more energy efficient. Traditional heating equipment can't compete with this level of energy savings. Heat pumps. United States. Heat pumps. Peak efficiency. Lexology. By using heat from the surrounding environment rather than a fuel source, this allows the heat pump to provide a coefficient of performance, COP, for United States. Dolrata CEO has his eye on the US CO2 heat pump market. Natural refrigerants. Brian Bonner spoke with naturalrefrigerants.com about Dolrata's new commercial CO2 heat pump coming to market in 2025. United States. The government wants to give you $10,000 for this cutting-edge home upgrade. MSN My heat pump is great, saving me money and keeping me comfortable, one Redditor shared in response to a post titled Heat Pumps. Are they as good as California heat pumps? New CA rebate program launched to cut home energy costs. MSN. A new rebate program could save California families up to $8,000 on an electric heat pump for home heating and cooling. The home electrification. California. California launches new rebates to help cut home energy costs. India Post. Heating and cooling heat pump. Rebates for multifamily building owners for a wider array of electric appliances became available on October 8, 2024. Colorado. Keep warm this winter with what's smart. Fox 13 News. Whether it's a dual fuel, ductless, ground source, or a standard high-efficiency heat pump, Rocky Mountain Power has available rebates to help reduce. In fall, winter, and spring, the heat pump provides efficient heating and the gas furnace takes over only when needed during the coldest months of the Georgia. Georgia now offers home energy rebates. ICHR News. Georgia rebates available. Qualified heat pump heating and cooling systems are among the products for which low and middle income homeowners can. Canada Thunder Bay. License of former Thunder Bay police lawyer suspended Canada. Head topics. New heat pump rebate excludes Thunder Bay but includes Kenora. New heat pump rebate excludes Thunder Bay but includes Kenora rebates of up to. Australia. 7 essential reasons to install a pool heat pump in 2025. The Western Weekender. As Australian families seek ways to maximize their backyard enjoyment, pool heat pump prices in Sydney have become a hot topic of conversation. 5 United Kingdom heat pumps. RAWSEP View. Britain doubles funds available for individuals heat pump switch. United Kingdom Britain. Britain announces plan to boost heat pump uptake. Reuters. Britain announced on Thursday a doubling of funds available to help people switch to environmentally friendly heat pumps to keep their homes warm. United Kingdom. UK makes it easier for homes to install electric heat pumps. BNN Bloomberg. The UK is ramping up support for electric heat pumps, a key technology to cut the country's dependence on natural gas to keep homes warm during. United Kingdom. Warm Homes Plan. Government beefs up support for heat pumps and insulation. Business Green. The package includes a £30 million budget boost for the boiler upgrade scheme, BUS, which provides grants of up to £7,500 off the cost of a heat pump.